So I have sitting here with me a lady that we've just met probably within the last, I say, a month or so, about a month ago. Her name is Tami Fitzgerald. She is with an organization called North Carolina Values. And I wanted her, after we talked on the phone, I was like, we need to have her come and just share who she is, what she's a part of, the things that they've done, what they're working on getting accomplished here in North Carolina, so you can hear from her. And then we want to try to connect the dots with as many people. What we're trying to do as we have these coalition events is not only kind of lay some philosophical framework, we want to get some practical application and some connections of people that are doing real stuff in the world, specifically outside the religious sphere, if that makes sense. It may have a religious basis and everything, but we need to have conversations with people that are saying these are some things that we're doing in these different spheres. So this weekend happens to be kind of with a lot of emphasis on public policy and on government. So this is going to be a great time together. So I want to just introduce to you, and if you guys would make her feel welcome, Tami Fitzgerald.
Thank you, John.
Well, tell us about you. Just tell us about Tami first before we get into anything else.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I've enjoyed this just as much as you have, I'm sure. But I am an attorney, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And so that's who I am in a nutshell.
I didn't think attorneys were Christians. Is that not true?
Well,
Are you're doing a new paradigm?
there are just a few.
Just a few. She's one of the chosen. So tell us a little bit about your story. You were not in North Carolina for a while. We talked about that. How did you get over here? Like, what were the circumstances, and all that?
Yeah, so my husband and I grew up in Texas and Oklahoma, and we went to college at Oklahoma State University, and that's where we met. And I went to law school at the University of Oklahoma while we were married, after we got married, and went to practice law in a law firm in Oklahoma City. I was an oil and gas attorney. And 6 years into that, I had my first child, and my law firm didn't know what to do with a pregnant attorney. So it was, but while I was on maternity leave, my husband got a promotion. And so this uprooted our family, and we moved to Arizona. And so I had to quit my job. I was a partner in my law firm, and moved away from both families and lived in Arizona for about 3 years. And I was determined to go back to work and practice law. So I took the bar there and passed it, and the Lord had a different plan. And it said while I was studying for the bar and with a newborn baby, the Lord just completely changed my heart about going back to work. And so I took an 18-year hiatus from work to raise my children. And I'm so glad I did. I've never had one day of regret, and I encourage young mothers all the time that work will always be there, but your children won't. And so I really was privileged, and I thank my husband a lot for, allowing me that opportunity to stay home with our kids. And so when my youngest was in high school, I went back to work, just part-time, because I still wanted to be the soccer mom that drove all the boys to soccer matches and basketball games and all of that. So I worked while he was in school. And I worked for a nonprofit that worked on Christian public policy issues, because that was really my heart's calling, to work on public policy. And during that time, I learned how to lobby. And I wasn't used as an attorney; I was used as a lobbyist in this organization. So I worked there for a few years, and then the Lord called me to start another group, my own group, and it's called NC Values Coalition. And this calling came from a desire to be salt and light in the culture, Matthew 13, and so there were some opportunities in the political arena to pass some things at the legislature that we had been trying in the other organization for years to pass. One of them being the marriage amendment to protect marriage as between a man and a woman and put it in the state constitution. And I had seen all these business groups come to the legislature, and they all have a lobbyist and a PAC. A PAC is a political action committee. And so their lobbyists ask the legislators to pass bills. Their PAC helps them get elected. And so by helping them get elected, the right people get elected, they're then able to have more effect, more success when they ask them to pass certain bills. And what I realized was that the Christians in our state weren't being represented on the PAC side. They weren't helping with elections. And so when they came and asked them, the legislators, to pass pro-life bills or a marriage amendment, there was really no power behind it because they weren't helping in elections. And so that is the genesis of the NC Values Coalition, to help get the right people in office so that they will advance biblical values. Because it doesn't matter what you say to people once they're elected. If they don't share your worldview, they're never going to advance it. And so that's the genesis behind who I am.
That is, whoa, that's loud. This one can come down a little bit. So that's incredible. So tell us a little bit about that organization. Do you function as a political action committee? What's the inner workings of that? Like, just for us that are not in that arena, and we've got people that need to be in that arena, what does that look like as far as the inner workings and participation?
Well, we started the organization as these are IRS designations, a 501c4. Most of you are pastors and your churches are 501c3s, which are charitable organizations. But a 501c4 is still a nonprofit, but we can spend half our time on political issues and advocating for candidates. But we've also formed, since then, we have formed a 501c3 to work on educational issues, and we have formed 2 PACs. We have one federal PAC and a state PAC. So we're able to collect donations from people who care about a biblical worldview and then advocate for candidates with our PACs.
That is phenomenal. So tell us a little bit about, so when we were talking on the Zoom call, you had mentioned, I think maybe that's what you talked about just a second ago, but how did that come about to where and what was the result of you guys working on that public policy for the Marriage Amendment Act, and what were the inner workings of that? What was the result of it? How did that all go? Talk about that.
Well, when I look back on it, I think I must have been crazy because I was the chairwoman of Vote for Marriage NC, which was the marriage amendment campaign. And that was the first thing we did out of the gate. And but you know, my pastor says this: all pastors talk about when God equips you when He calls you, and He certainly did. And so that marriage amendment passed by 61%. It was the last one in the country to pass before the U.S. Supreme Court overturned all of the marriage amendments across the country with the Obergefell decision, which ushered in same-sex marriage.
That's incredible. So what are some of the things that you personally have encountered, faced? If we have people that are going to engage in this, we're going to equip them not just with partnerships or education and training, but what are some of the things that you've faced or that are challenges that people are going to see when they get into this arena that maybe we don't know about in our world?
I don't know if I can hone it down, but I'll try. I guess one thing that's been surprising to me, you expect people who are atheists or who are not believers to be your enemies, but you don't expect other believers to be your enemies. And that has been hard. And people who, even some pastors who are elected officials, we have about 7 pastors who are legislators in the General Assembly in North Carolina. And several of them have voted against pro-life bills that would chip away at Roe versus Wade. Several of them have voted against bills that we helped bring that would keep non-discrimination laws from including sexual orientation and gender identity. And that's always shocking to me when it's a pastor. I don't understand that. And it's between them and God. I know that. But it's disappointing, and it's hard to get past sometimes. But some of the other things I've encountered is that we have a state full of wonderful people who really, a lot of people here who love God and really want to do things to further his kingdom. And when I encounter those people across the state, I'm always inspired and encouraged. And even if, as I go into the legislature, that gets really dirty sometimes. But knowing the people across the state gives me hope and encouragement. And we try to work with people across the state to bring issues to their attention that we think are problematic. And we really get a great reception from people across the state. And then we try to translate that into legislation that we can get passed in the legislature. It's been very difficult for the last several years to get anything signed into law. We did get 3 bills signed into law last year. We got 3 vetoed, and we had about 11 more bills that we were seeking to get passed. And some of these bills, like one of the bills was a couple to push back on transgenderism. One was to to keep people under the age of 21 from being the subjects of experimental medicine, where they're given hormone blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgery that permanently alters their bodies. There are so many people who have done this, have gone through it as children, and then regret it and reverse that, try to reverse it later, but it's permanent. And so that's just one of the bills we tried last year, and some of them we're going to keep trying. Another one was to bring more transparency and education about the curriculum that kids are being taught and the materials. And we hear a lot about this right now. We've had this bill for 4 years called Parents' Right to Know. We haven't gotten it passed, but we're going to keep trying because we think parents do have a right to know.
Yeah. So a lot of frustration, a lot of not success in a sense as you're trying. So what, from your perspective, in order for some of these things to be more widely accepted or for the laws to be passed or whatever, at what level does there need to be engagement? What do you see that would be a remedy to change whether or not we have more biblical policy in government? Because it seems like at the top, those that are in power, there's not a lot of you can't get things finished or done. So what do you see as a something to solve that issue?
Well, I think people have to just rise up and demand it. I mean, I think grassroots participation in political issues is what it will take. But I do want to say that the Lord has taught me over and over again that I'm just to do the work, and He's in charge of the results. I keep having to learn that lesson, but it is what keeps me hopeful, and it's what keeps me on track with what the Lord's called me to do, because I'm not in charge of the results. I can just do the work and do the best I know how to do, and then the Lord has to change hearts. And so I think, a grassroots groundswell on some of these issues might help. But more than anything, I think what will help is electing new leaders. And, the people who are standing in our way, I mean, one of them is Governor Cooper, because he's vetoed every pro-life bill that we've passed, and other bills too. So, and it's a deterrent. We can't even get bills brought up in the legislature because we're told, oh, the governor will veto that. And so it's a deterrent to good public policy and good laws that will protect our family and advance our biblical values.
This is so good. Just as a reaction to something that you were saying, it just provoked me in my thought process. So at the top level, We're talking about electing or repositioning leadership, but the layers behind that become political action committees that then people are essentially beholden to by the time they're elected, because those are the people that essentially push them into that position. So then that behooves all of us to begin to build a coalition, if that makes sense, to be able to work together for a biblical worldview and biblical values. And one of the things that I think has been a problem in the church, from my perspective, may not be your perspective, but from my perspective, is that we do our own thing. It's one of the issues. I don't think it's necessarily just the church. I think there are other nonprofits that we see in our city. One of the greatest tragedies that we've discovered is that there are so many resources available to people in our community, but because we don't work well together, people are not connected and don't even know. And so there's probably agreement. If she were to just lay out her personal agenda on the table today, there would probably be agreement on, I don't know, 85% of that. 15% of that we may not be, well, I'm not sure about that. The issue is because there's 15% that we're like, no. We write off the entire thing. That's what we do. And we sabotage everything that we could do together because we can't cooperate on one or two or three minor issues. And we've got to decide, I think, what is central to us, the essence of the important issues, and say, okay, let's work on that, and let's figure this other thing out. We can't do that together, but let's walk together, even though we don't have agreement on every single thing. That is so important, because until we can do that, then we're not ever going to have a coalition that has enough power or enough resources to be able to influence then who's being elected. So policy starts a cooperation, I see, on just the base level.
Well, exactly, John. And that's why we have coalition in our name, North Carolina Values Coalition. And one of the things that we've sought to do is to work with churches across the state to get people in the church involved in some of these issues, because legislators respond to constituents more than they respond to lobbyists. So if you live in Greenville and your legislators in Greenville, if the church will talk about these issues from the pulpit and inspire people to contact legislators, which the church can do, on issues. They can't advocate for candidates, but they can advocate on issues. And the problem is there are so many pastors afraid to even talk about the issues. And these are not political issues. These are biblical issues. I mean, the life of an unborn child is a biblical issue. Same-sex marriage is a biblical issue, and yet the church is not even addressing these issues. And that is why we are somewhat neutered in how we're able to influence legislators, because the body of Christ is not speaking up about these biblical issues.
What do you see as the reason that is not happening?
I think we're afraid. I think we're afraid of losing our tax-exempt status. We're afraid of government control. And, as followers of Christ, we know the ultimate freedom. And so to be afraid of losing that freedom should motivate us as Christians to speak up on these issues. We have something very valuable to offer the world, to know Christ as Savior and as Lord. And if we're not speaking up, if we're not carrying that into the legislative arena, shame on us. I can tell you as a lobbyist, I've had so many opportunities to sit in a legislator's office and witness to them, to talk about my faith, because a lot of them don't know what to do on issues, and they're confused and they're confounded. They don't know which way to go. And I've prayed with the legislators. I pray with them on the phone when I call them. And just to be able to have that kind of contact with people who need to know what the Lord thinks about these issues is a great opportunity. But people think legislators go into their jobs every day knowing exactly what to do. They don't. And so what they need is people in their districts talking to them. They need people like me sitting and talking about Scripture and praying with them and reminding them that they're there to represent Christ, not just their district.
It's so good. So good. So do you have educational pieces? Do you have things that you can partner with churches to say, I don't know what to say about this issue or whatever, or do you have something like, if you want to take your congregation through ABC or whatever, are there resources that you either have or have access to that people can reach out to you and receive?
Yes, we have. This is something that we produced called the Mama Bear Manual. And I've got some cards out on the table. You can download it on your phone or computer with a QR code. This happens to be a printed copy, which I don't have others, but you can download it. And the Mama Bear Manual helps parents identify harmful curriculum, and we give a 12-step process for how to fight against it in classrooms. Now, we're doing some workshops in 3 different locations around the state in April. We've got one in Charlotte, one in Kernersville, and one in Raleigh. And any parent who needs to know about harmful curriculum and how to fight it in their child's classroom should come to one of these workshops. And I've got flyers for those out on the table. But when we have legislative battles, which the legislature doesn't go into session until May 18th, but when it starts, if you're on our mailing list, we will email our list about how to contact your legislator on certain pieces of legislation. And we sometimes ask people to come to the legislature and sit in a committee room or in a gallery, because we're certainly encountering the other oppositional groups on the other side. I mean, when we have a pro-life bill, Planned Parenthood is there with their pink hats on and their pink T-shirts in numbers, great numbers. And so it helps for legislators to look out and see, oh, these are the Christians that showed up to push for pro-life bill. That way they think that there are people in the state who really want them to vote on a pro-life bill. It gets lonely, and you get a lot of criticism from both sides when you're a legislator, and so they're looking for approval. Now, this has been one of the things that I've learned in my position is the Lord has really given me great confidence in what He's called me to do. And so I don't need approval. And that's not because of who I am. That's because of who the Lord is. And I know that what I'm working on is truth. And there's no doubt in my mind. And so when I get threatened or when people come against me, I just count it as great joy, because I'm doing so much that I'm being persecuted. And so if I'm not being persecuted, I vow to do more. And,
That's phenomenal. Isn't that good? Okay, get your pens ready. So there's folks in here that they're going to want to connect with you after this, find out more. You guys get ready to write some stuff down. How can they reach out to Tami and get in touch with you?
Thank you. Well, you can go to our website, ncvalues.org, and sign up, and we'll send you a weekly email with the top 5 stories from that week in
Phenomenal.
North Carolina. But we also will send you action alerts when we have things that you need to take action on. And that's the best way to get in touch with us, is just to sign up on our website. We're also on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, so if you want to follow us in those places, that's great too. I think we're at NC Values, and so thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Man, can we just thank Tami for being here today? Incredible.